Hello guys, welcome back, and we're here again for standard deck tech. It's been almost, I think, almost a month since Wilds of the Drain's already out in the format, but we're still continuously exploring some new deck strategies and other related that we can do with what this new set can offer to us. And for this deck feature today, we have an Orzhov Aggro, which we call this one as black and white. I think it is more of a mid-range deck, but let's check the card list later on. So this is found from daily tournaments at Hareruya, Japan. It is posted also on the MTG Top 8 website. It got my interest because of probably basically an Orzhov player back in the day, with one of my early decks being of the black and white with using Vindicate, Phyrexian Arena, and also Spirit Links for that setup. So with this deck list from Onodera Kyuhei, I think this is one of the top 8 finishers. I'm not sure if he got into the top 4, but surprisingly we'll still have a good discussion of what this deck would look like. So we have 19 creatures in the build, 5 enchantments including these new virtue cards from Wilds of the Drain, 3 planeswalkers, 34 lands, and 9 instants. So basically almost all of them are just plainly spot removals, but we have also 15 sideboards which we can also discuss later on. So we're going to start off with the lineup of the creatures. So first up, we have 2 copies of Katar Commando. So this is just basically a 2/1 utility creature that can also attack for 3 and can also trade off for creatures with 3 toughness. But the good thing here is that it can also be able to destroy relevant artifact or enchantment. So in any situations, you can have a walking disenchant at your lineup. And next up is 4 copies of Phyrexian Mercenary. This is from Dominaria United, but I'm glad that this is also seeing play now here in this deck because of its ability. So not only having a 2-drop, but also becomes a good utility creature later on with its kicker cost. So if you're able to kick this one, you can return target creature card from your graveyard to your hand. So with the slots of lineup from your setup here, you can basically gain advantage in the late game because of its ability that you can kick off and return a relevant creature that has been discarded or died early on during your battle with your opponent. Now with that setup for Phyrexian Mercenary, we also have copies of Trespasser, that is 2 copies of the Graveyard Trespasser. So this is still probably the best 3-drop for black now in the format, not only in Standard but also in Pioneer, and can also get to flip into Graveyard Glutton that can be more efficient in exiling cards from graveyards. So in any situations, you can just exile your own creature to help your opponent lose 1 life for each of those creature cards that was exiled, and you will also gain 1 life. Now we also have 4 copies of Gumdrop Poisoner. I think this deck would go with the curving out early on with the Phyrexian Mercenary, since this has also lifelink, and just casting or hard casting a Gumdrop Poisoner so that it can kill off any of the winning creatures from your opponent. So that may be the best way to do it if you are going well against another aggro deck, since you would also gain advantage because of the lifelink effects. It can enter the battlefield to -X a target creature, where X is the amount of life you gain this turn. And also you can also create a food token, which can become a fodder for any of your shenanigans, or can be used to sacrifice for roll token or for other sacrifice effects, for example. So with these 4 copies in the list, you make sure that you can have a very efficient draw. That's I've said earlier, you can curve out early on with a Missionary for lifelink and into a Gundrop Poisoner for a hard cast and also a removal effect. With that said, we also have a copy of Devouring Sugar Maw. This has its ability that you can have for dinner, wherein this is an instant adventure. Create a 1/1 white human creature token and a food token, and later on you can cast it for 4. That's 2 and black, and it's a 6/6 menace trample. And at the beginning of your upkeep, you may sacrifice an artifact, enchantment, or token. So if you don't, you may just tap Devouring Sugar Maw. So with these early creatures that can produce these food tokens, you can still be able to satisfy Devouring Sugar Maw's upkeep trigger, in which you can still be able to attack with a good 6/6 menace trampler creature. And also we have the typical 4-drop for the black-based decks, that is Shoulder Apocalypse is also included here, with the lots of punishing opponents with their extra card draws, wherein you can have them lose 2 life for each of the card draw effects. And also we have the Steel Setup, which can be casted for the prototype effect. It becomes a 3/3 for 3 that is flying, and at the beginning of your combat, you can create these effects of Flying Vigilance or Lifelink. I think this is mostly of Lifelink because you have these creatures that can also act as a spot removal, so you can have those effects in which you will just gain life and then play off the Poisoner and the kill off your opponent's creatures. Also, we have 4 copies of Operation Fresh Order. This is just going also with the 3-drop because it's prototype effect that can become a 3-3, 4-3, and also a Menace and Lifelink. It has a good ability to ward. And later on, you can just hard cast it for 7 if you have enough mana already. It becomes a 7-5 creature and having also the same advantage on its abilities. That's 4 copies in the deck. So that basically wraps up your creatures. For enchantments, also we have a lone copy of Brexan Edena for gas, since you are basically gaining life, so paying extra life to draw a card, which also gives you a good advantage pre-on and pre-sideboard setup. Also, we have 2 copies of versatility, which is also can produce a 2-2 White Knight creature token with Vigilance, and then later on, hard casting it would have you to benefit of your end step, putting up a Samson counter on each of your creatures you control, and then up tapping in those creatures. And also another life gain and spot removal is Virtual Persistence with the Lockwing Scorn, wherein you can have target creature of your opponent gets -3/-3 and you will gain 2 life. And you can have also a Depth's Nail effect. At the beginning of upkeep, put target creature card from a graveyard into the battlefield under your control. That's 2 copies of that in the deck. Now for the instant, which are, I've said, that are mostly composed of spot removals, we have 2 cut downs, 1 copy of the March of the World Light, which can also be efficient of not only removing creatures but also exiling artifact and enchantments equal to the mana value of X or less. 2 copies of Not Dead After All. This can also benefit here with its the good targets are your Steel Seraph and your Phyrexian Freshgorger, wherein if they be caught to any spot removal or would die in combat, you can have this effect that if this creature dies return to the battlefield, tap under its owner's control and then creating a Wicked Roll token attached to it. So what does the token does is that each creature gets +1, and then when this aura is put into the graveyard, the opponent loses 1 life. So that also kind of a combat trick effect in which we have 2 copies in the deck, and also can be efficient against mid-range decks wherein they have pretty much a lot of spot removals, in which you can also protect your creatures with this one. Also, we have 2 copies of Destroy Evil, since mostly of the spot removals would not only destroy creatures with power or in toughness for a creature, but also can destroy in a relevant enchantment, and that means also would include enchantment creatures. And of course, 2 copies of Infernal Grasp. I would prefer this one because of the deck that has a lot of lifelink. You would need to have a solid spot removal at the cost of 2 life, which would not really matter because of, again, you can still gain life out of those life lost. So with this setup, again, we check on the Planeswalkers, in which we only have 3. We have the Elspeth, which just adding up support of creating this 1/1 white soldier coin with lifelink, and also having to pump up a relevant creature and becomes Angel and Flying, and have this ultimate ability if needed. And of course, Wandering Emperor is your ultimate support Planeswalker, as good as spot removal, can create these solid samurai tokens and also gain your card advantage or board advantage in the form of +1/+1 counter and having your creature gain first strike. Now for the land lineup, pretty much the only land creature here is the 4 copies of Restless Fortress, in which you can just pay for to become a 1/4, 1 in black nightmare creature token creature admin in which when its attacks, defending player loses 2 life and you will gain 2 life. So along with it also just the usual lineup, just Pain Lands with mana fix for Caves of Koilos, Channel Lands, Iganju, a copy of Mirex for any additional creatures, basic Plains, again Shattered Sanctum 4 copies, basic Swamps, and Takinuma the Abandoned Mire for your last Channel Land, or swapping up the 24 land lineup for this deck. And I think this is pretty much good lineup here. The mana base would be efficient because of the curve is just going with 3.44, and we have basically a lot of 2 drops and 3 drops that can just suffice with this land count for this deck. And last but not least, for your sideboard, again, these are just pretty basic but very powerful in terms of having the access to white and black. So we have discard effects in the form of Duress, that's 3 copies in the sideboard against mid-range and control decks. Also 2 copies of Invasion of Gobakan that can also delay a relevant hand from your opponent. It's best also against mid-range and control decks. 2 copies of Shoulder's Edict in case that you would need to have sacrifice effects that can also deal with Planeswalkers. 2 copies of Soulless Jailer. So this Soulless Jailer can prevent permanent cards entering the battlefield from graveyards and also casting non-creature spells from graveyard or exile. So in any way they can just prevent this shenanigans, and also have a 2-drop creature which can also be pumped later on by your other virtue or your Wandering Emperor basang counter effect. Also, we have 2 copies of Filigree Silex. I think this goes with the tokens lineup, wherein you can just pay 2 and then casting it and tap sacrifice, destroy each non-land permanent with mana value equal to the number of oil counters on Filigree Silex. Or later on, you can just put a counter depending on how many oil counters you would need against certain situations in your opponent. And also, Path of Peril against maybe for mono black aggro, maybe for mono white. I think the humans deck is still prevalent in standard format, and this would be the good sideboard card here. And also, we wouldn't have any problem in casting for the cleave effect because of this black and white ability that is also catered by this deck. And also additional Shouldered Apocalypse for matchups against maybe for mid-range ramp or control, wherein they would have additional card draw and you would punish them for that setup. So that's basically it for the sideboard. And last look for the color distribution. Surprisingly, there's still a good setup here with the color of that is basically having equal with black and white. Mana curve goes with more of 3 mana value and 4 mana value, but surprisingly the 2 mana value in terms of your 2 drops and 2 mana cost spot removals would also go here in this total. And last but not least are your tokens. So we have full token, human token, knight token, again Persian Might from the Mirex, Samurai token from the Emperor, soldier token from Archangel Elspeth, and the Wicked Roll token that is also generated by this card, Not Dead After All. So I guess that's pretty much it for this deck tech feature for Orzhov Aggro from daily tournaments of Hareruya, Japan. If you've seen this list on your daily grind in MTG Online or MTG Arena, just let me know in the comments below that we can have a good discussion how you would encounter this deck and how you would rate its playability and how other sideboard plan would be used or can be upgraded on this one, as we can compare the current sideboard with what some of the metagame updates we would have in the current standard format. So I guess that's pretty much it for this deck tech. Don't forget to like, subscribe, just click on notifications bell so that you can be first hand to be notified for any of the new uploads. Also, we'll have more of the previews and Ixalan as we would wait for the official announcement on Twitch and also from the Magic the Gathering website. Again guys, thank you for checking this video and see you on the next one.